So I'm in Salisbury this weekend for the NV Stone Circle gravel event or festival, as it turns out, as there's a DJ, there's food vendors, there's coffee, there's camping, there's even a fancy dress hill climb, which I'm going to take part in about 30 minutes time. I'm going to disguise myself, no one's going to know that I'm former British hill climb champion. I'm just going to rock up in my potato suit and no one's going to be any the wiser. As you can see, I've already got some gravel residue on my forehead. Been out for a little ride this afternoon with about 25 other cyclists and got a little taste of what's to come tomorrow. I'm doing the longest route, 220 kilometers, and apparently 80% of it is gravel. Well, the fancy dress hill climb was a real good laugh, and as someone quite rightly pointed out, I'd come dressed, and not just a potato, but a King Edward potato variety. I cannot take credit for that someone pointed that out. But needless to say, it was a good little fun extra thing to do while I was at the event. And it was great to see people, you know, embrace the less serious side of, you know, what we were doing essentially. Anyway, this was obviously the night before the main event, which we'll now get to. So my alarm was set for, well, pre-dawn, 3:30 AM. And let me tell you, that is not what I wanted to be doing. I did want to start off at 4:30 with the very first wave. Now, because there's 3 different length events, you're encouraged to start as early as possible if you were doing the really long route, which is fair enough. And if you're doing the shorter routes, you can have a way more relaxed and chill morning, a nice breakfast, and make your way off a couple of hours later. Something that I certainly would have preferred to have done. But here I was, lining up on a start line, in the dark, and pondering if I should have brought lights with me, considering the first gravel section was going to be straight away. Turns out I'd eaten enough carrot and I was fine with my night vision. You can see lights in the background. I'm with this one rider just off the front here. But it became clear within the first couple of kilometers that I might be riding for the next couple of hours on my own. I settled into my own pace up some of the very short, sharp, punchy climbs that we had in the first couple of kilometers. And this was just before we got to Stonehenge, which sadly wasn't basking in the morning sunlight, but instead was shrouded in mist. Very apt though for such a place steeped in history. Fun fact, some of those big stones you see at Stonehenge have actually come from the Preseli mountain ranges, which is over in West Wales, not far from me. Makes you think how on earth they got them all the way to Salisbury. Anyway, I made hay as the sun was starting to shine and quickly got on to the section of gravel that we had special permission to ride just for this event. And that was through the military of defense section. Now, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I thought this was the most boring part of the whole route. And I say that because it was just wide open, exposed, like motorway style gravel. We were battling a headwind, and this was all kind of demoralizing for such a very early start as well. But saying that, I knew that if I get this done early, then I would have the rest of the ride to potentially have much better scenery and gravel to deal with. And thankfully, I was correct. I actually made a point of pushing on quite a lot in this first 50 to 110 kilometers because I wanted to bank a lot of decent effort in the first couple of hours, and then when we hit this quite vast road section later in the ride, I would use that as a chance to just back off and recover a little bit and then really push on in the last 50 kilometers again. Part of my training for the Adapter Tour coming up in a couple of weeks. We're about 60 kilometers in, coming up to the first feed soon. Sturka are going to be there. It's actually been fairly easy going. The gravel's been very open. I've normalized 280 watts this first 2 hours. I'm hoping just to keep pressing on and see how I do, to be honest. But I'm definitely
ready for the road bits when they come.
So that was my strategy. Now, hitting the first feed station at 6:30 meant that I hadn't really eaten much in the first 2 hours anyway, so I didn't actually utilise the feed station. But Sturka were there with a full selection of their product, and I just opted for, well, to top up my bottle with some more water. Kind of boring, but it is all I needed at the time, and I knew that there was going to be plenty more feed stations on the route. Something that I take my hat off to the organisation. The feed stations were good, and the people running them were extremely well organised. So after dropping off the Salisbury Plain, I then make it into a brand new landscape, which is the forest.
Bit of civilization. Oh.
Now, at around about 70 or 80 kilometres in, we descend off Salisbury Plain and head through Warminster, a very urban area, before heading into a whole new landscape, a forest.
Oh, I'm loving this forestry. Reminds me of Wales. Reminds me of home. I like the route so far.
I love the pine woods, the dense trees, the greenery, the greens, the browns, all the colours, and the much softer, muddier type of terrain that you'd see. Now, it was somewhere along this section that we passed King Alfred's Tower, but as quickly as it was in view, it was out of view, and I never actually got a shot of it. But there were some tasty little kickers on this section. There was some climbs that were coming out of nowhere, and they almost felt quite relentless in a way, and I was hitting them one after another.
Just stopped for a quick nature break, and it seems like an appropriate time because I had to come over this gate here. It's been beautiful so far. I mean, full on gravel. We've hardly done any road, like literally. I can't. Maybe a couple of kilometers combined, if that, and I've just reached the 110k mark. So there must be a little bit of road now, I would imagine. Well, I hope so anyway. I'm not complaining. I'm really enjoying it actually. It's very unique. And I'm not alone on these trails. Well, I might be on my own on the bike, but there's loads of walkers and dog walkers. It feels like I'm out in the middle of nowhere, but I'm obviously not. And no problems. Everyone's very courteous, including myself. Oh, we got another climb. Just non-stop. Oh. These 3,000 meters we're climbing, we're definitely not climbing them all in one go, that's for sure. Oh my word, this has come out of nowhere. Wasn't paying attention to the elevation profile, obviously.
Finally, we emerge onto the road, and I was kind of looking forward to this bit now because I knew that I ticked off essentially what is half distance, and we'd passed through the military defence section of gravel. We've now done the forests.
So I don't want to speak too soon, but it seems like we are now out of the off-beaten path a little bit onto some more solid surface, and potentially now going to tick off some kilometres on some nice quiet lanes.
And when I first saw this route was 80% gravel or single track and 20% road, I didn't expect it to be coming in big chunks, but that's exactly what felt like happened with the road. There was just this continuation for potentially 30 kilometers, maybe even 40 kilometers of just backcountry roads, lanes that were very quiet and actually relatively flat, which led me to believe that the final 50 or so kilometers, again on gravel, were going to be quite challenging. And I wasn't wrong there either. So these rural lanes of North Dorset were stunning. I really enjoyed riding around there, and There were plenty of little villages, there were some shops on the route as well if you're really desperate to stop.
Where on earth are we here? That escalated quickly, like I'm not even sugarcoating it. 1 minute we're on, yeah, a very normal road. Next minute, in the words of Benji Narton, I am in Narnia. Oh, look at these buildings.
And eventually I make it to Sturminster Newton. It's at this point that you make your way around the little town and you pop on to a railway line, or at least an old railway line which has now been turned into another gravel cycle track. This is known as the North Dorset Trailway and offers quite a smooth reintroduction to the next gravel section you will encounter. And I really think it's from this point on that I really start to enjoy what this route has to offer. I'm an absolute sucker for a cycle path, and I especially love it when it's built into a route, because you know that it generally just takes you from A to B with very little faff. It's really hard when you're riding and doing an event to also think about what you want to film and the kind of story that you want to tell at the same time. And more often than not, you're switching between thinking about your fueling and how the event is going and how your effort is going and feeling. And then you're also, like, one half of your brain is thinking about how the filming is going and what you're planning to get across in a story. I just hope it's coming across okay. I hope I'm doing it justice. So if you enjoyed this video so far, perhaps give it a like and subscribe. We're nearly at 30,000 subscribers, and my little quiet goal was to try and hit that in the month of July while the Tour de France is on. After leaving the safe boundary of the cycle path, we start to head across country, through some fields, through some quite narrow paths, and eventually into another village where feed station number 3 is situated. And this is the one I definitely wanted to stop at about 165, 170 kilometers in.
That's clearer.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Thank you.
Alright.
After my little slice of watermelon and downing a can of Coke far too quickly, I got back onto the road. The final 50 kilometers were gonna test me, I'm not gonna lie, which features some proper climbs, some ridge lines, and the occasional fast descent. The biggest climb of the day begins at Tollard Royal, taking you to the route's highest point. It starts quite steep, but quickly mellows into more manageable 6% gradients. But even off-road, and 170 kilometers in, it's not easy. Riding the ridge towards Wyn Green, it was one of the best moments of the day for me. You had views either side, and this chalky white gravel was quite unique so far to the route that we've been riding on. Now the final big climb up White Sheet Hill, it didn't look too bad on the profile, but it just kept dragging and dragging. And this was really, really late in the day too, so I was really starting to come to the end of my reserves and also my patience with my ability to ride gravel technically quite well. I was just hitting every pothole, every stone, you know, that thing you do when you just try to shift your weight to stop the impact of, you know, a pothole, for example. I just wasn't doing it. I just couldn't be bothered. At that point, I was like, I want some smooth road if possible. Is that too much to ask? I just want to get off this gravel for a little bit. I just slightly recover, and then I'm happy to do another section. But no, it was like, you're going to stay on this gravel for another few kilometers, and then we'll give you some road.
Ow! How did this happen? Thankfully those walkers just warned me. Yep. bunny hop skills not quite up to that standard. I am soaking in sweat. It's so warm because it's a tailwind, so getting no cooling effect on climbs that slow. I'm just soaking. We were on an A road then for all but 130 metres, and I enjoyed every single metre of it. Never taken a piece of tarmac for granted ever again.
So it really tested not just my patience, but my tolerance. But in keeping with the theme of the day, just as I was coming to my wit's end with the gravel, we jumped off onto some smooth tarmac and down this really perfect, nice descent that just went on for a good couple of kilometres, good enough to just reset, and makes you think that, you know, everything's just, all your troubles have disappeared. And I felt for sure that we were going to hit another gravel section, but thankfully we didn't, or at least not until we were to do the very last section back to the campsite. And this is where I was actually joined by a group of riders who were on one of the other routes. I shared some tarmac with them for a couple of kilometres before pressing on the next climb. It was a bit of a drag to the finish, but at that point I knew where I was, and mentally that's sometimes a really good thing. As I climbed up past the campsite and around back into the old Serum Fort, I was a little bit of a broken man, but I felt very accomplished. It was such a nice day to set myself a little goal, to push on and to see what I could do over the course of 220 kilometres on this much off-road terrain. And I was really happy with my ride, and I really thoroughly enjoyed.
Oh, I know where I am. This is where we came down this morning in the first descent. Well, I finished. Finito. I get to stay on the bike. I've got to say the event certainly lived up to its name, you know, well, the route name at least. That was tough, real tough. 8 hours and 8 minutes, 6,100 kilojoules, normalized power of 247. It's 220k with just under 3,000 meters of elevation gain. And we averaged 27 kilometers an hour. Well, in conclusion, I thought the route was fantastic. I think it was really interesting that there was very little road, and when it was just largely in one big chunk. Would I recommend the event? Yes, but the 220k route is a long way, and I went fairly deep to do it in 8 hours, and bearing in mind I have the Atapta tour in a couple of weeks, so I wanted to squeeze myself a little bit. The 155 kilometer route could be a really nice balance between getting in most of the gravel but without doing, you know, what is a fairly large jump up to 220 kilometers. But it's up to you. Whatever floats your boat, whatever challenge you want. And that's what it's just been today. There's no prizes for first place, you know, there's no winners, there's no losers, there's nothing like that. Just been a really nice big day out, riding my bike, pushing myself as much as I want to, or as little as I want to, and exploring a new place. And sometimes that's what it's all about. But 3 weeks now until the Atapta tour, that's going to be the focus of this channel moving forward. I will see you in the next video.